أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على خاتم الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا Muhammad وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. We begin as we always do by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thanking Him. We'll take a moment inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take a moment to really reflect and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the numerous blessings that He has given us. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the family that we have that sit to the right of us, to the left of us. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for these gatherings, to be in the presence of people like Sister Karen, to be in the presence of people like Imam Zaid and each and every single one of you. Thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us to be in such a blessed gathering, and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to gather us in the best of gatherings with the best of company, the company of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. I've been asked to speak a little bit about the youth struggles, perhaps with a focus on the youth of our community. You know, and after spending some time studying, oftentimes I remember laying in bed in Medina and thinking about, man, what am I going to go back to? What are the challenges that are going to be there that I have to face? And oftentimes we begin to imagine the different challenges that our youth face, and it really does. I'll be completely honest with you. I'm not going to lie to you, brother and sister. It overwhelms me. And it overwhelms me to really begin to process the challenges that are faced in our youth. Before I even went to Medina, I realized why this work is important. I was a part of an organization called Young Muslims, which strives to provide a platform of empowerment and inclusivity to youth. I remember that I grew up going in an Islamic school, and after 8th grade, one of my classmates, who was half Desi, half Latino, he stopped coming to the Islamic school and he went far away, and rumors began to spread that maybe he wasn't Muslim anymore, maybe he wasn't practicing anymore. One day I opened my Facebook and I saw a friend request from him. And I started messaging him. I was like, what's going on, man? I didn't even say salam. I said, what's going on? Talk to me, bro. Where you been? It's been a minute. I started talking to him and he started telling me, Tariq, it's been a long time. I've been going through a lot of different things. My parents are going through a divorce. My father's been abusive to my mother, etc., etc. Things that I couldn't even begin to process. And I said, why don't you start coming to our halaqah? And for 6 months, my dear brothers and sisters, every Saturday I invited him to our youth program. After 6 months, this brother showed up to the masjid. And it was like Eid for me, like, all right, I'm going to pay for his meal. I asked my mom, I was young at this time, I asked my mom for extra money so I can pay for this guy's meal. She gave me a little bit of a hard time about it, but at the end she coughed up the $20, and we went out and we grabbed a bite together. After we ate and we had the halaqah and everything went perfect, and he literally told me, this is awesome. We walked into the masjid for Salat al-Isha, and I could tell he was nervous, because as we were walking in, he told me, Tariq, this is going to be the first time that I pray in years. First time that I pray in years. I said, I got you. Don't even worry about it. We went to the wudu area. He rolled up his sleeves. We began to make wudu together. And when he rolled up his sleeves, he had a sleeve of tattoos on each of his arms. He had piercings on his ears. And every single uncle that passed by criticized him. Every single uncle that passed by spoke ill of him. Every single uncle that knew Arabic told the other shabab to stay away. And wallahi, without exception, at that moment, at least 5. And he got up and he said, you know what, never mind. And I was like, what do you mean? Come on, bro, just hang out. Don't worry about them, forget about them. He walked out, and wallahi, I've never seen him in a masjid since that day. I've never seen him in a masjid since that day. Just the other day, we had a launch event at our masjid at the Mecca Center where I work, and a sister came up. And as I stood on the stage, I made a point to say, sister, if you don't wear hijab, brother, if you don't have a beard, if you haven't prayed in 10 years, I'm not saying that anything is okay or not okay, but this masjid is Allah's house, and you're always invited to Allah's house. You don't need nobody's permission slip to make it into Allah's house. This is not some elite country club in the city. This is none of that. This is Allah's house. And the people who enter Allah's house are the people He invites. A sister came up to me. She said that I've been a part of this community for 10 years. The last memory she had was when she was 4 years old, and she got criticized for coming to the masjid wearing short sleeves. She was 4 years old. And her dad attested to this. This is really a proper representation of the challenges that our youth face. But now I want to take a step back and say, you know what? Forget about the 21st century. Forget about 2017 in Chicago or in America. Let's talk about khayru khalqillah, Nabiyyina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as a youth director. What kind of a youth director was the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam? And the type of youth director that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was, I can't even begin to say. He was a man who every single day, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, was found being the best of resources for the youth. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the very beginning of his journey, we found Sumayya radiallahu ta'ala anha, the first martyr of Islam, being a woman. And her death, a tragic death, to mark the beginning of so many other martyrdoms. And to show that women are at the focal point of our history and our future. But what we often forget is there was her son Ammar ibn Yasir, who was sitting there and watching his mother die. And we find the Prophet ﷺ as a youth director, comforting and consoling him. ﷺ. You move on in the legacy of the Prophet ﷺ, and you'll find a young man sitting with the Prophet ﷺ, and a woman sitting in front of him, a young, attractive woman sitting in front of him. And this companion kept taking looks and taking glances and checking it out and scoping out the situation. And if this was to happen in many of our masajid today, we'd be like, how dare you, brother, leave the masjid, you're banished and exiled, and put a mark and maybe put wanted pictures of him up in the masjid, never come back again. The Prophet ﷺ moved his face away. He says, don't look, just pushed his face away. We find the Prophet ﷺ dealing with an alcoholic companion. A companion who's struggling with something that is considered a major sin, something that destroys families and households. And you find the Prophet ﷺ making dua that this companion abandon the alcohol, and telling him at one point of time, leave the alcohol outside the door of the masjid. Or just try not to come to the masjid when you're drunk. Not stopping him from the opportunity to get nearer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We find the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam wrestling and joking with the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, showing them immense love. We have a Wednesday program for kids between the ages of 11 and 13. And I've mentioned this often, and it continues to be something that I remind myself, is that I make a point, something I learned from one of my teachers. He ended every gathering by mentioning and telling us that he loved us. And I always found that a little bit weird. But I remember 2 weeks ago, one of the young youth walking in, he said, Tariq, one of the reasons I come here is because every week you tell me you love me. He said, I never heard that before. I never felt that before. I don't get that from my parents. They show him love in many ways. They're not terrible people necessarily, but they don't necessarily vocalize and express that to him. The Prophet ﷺ, he didn't have any hesitation when asked who was the most beloved to him. He didn't say, oh, it's Abu Bakr. He said, it's Aisha. He didn't even say my wife. Check this out. Think about it for a minute. How many of the men, especially the Arabs and the immigrants from us, how many of us when asked who's the most beloved person to us, you'll confidently say your wife's actual name, not my wife or my son. But actually, the Prophet ﷺ confidently and without hesitation, he said, Aisha. Look at that love. Look at that confidence. Learning to express love. And then so much love that the Prophet ﷺ, when he was asked, what about from the men? He didn't say Abu Bakr. What did he say? He said, Abuha. Associating the love, he said her father. Associating the love back to who? To Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. Look at that deep amount of love. What do we need to give the youth in our community? What we need to give the youth of our community, number one, is inclusivity. That no matter who you are, no matter how wealthy you are or you aren't, no matter how Arab or Desi or black or white or whatever you are, somewhere in between you are, the masjid is Allah's house and it is for yours to be in. This is number one. Number two is we need to show empathy. Brothers and sisters, when you look at a man, when you look at a woman, when you look at your own son or daughter, when you look at that person sitting next to you, you empathize with them, you connect with them, and you think about the journey that they're taking. And that's something that the Prophet ﷺ did every single day. He looked at the people in front of him, and he felt their pain. And he connected with them. and he took the journey with them. That you don't look at the sister and say, you're not religious enough for me, you're not rich enough for me, you're not this enough for me, you're not of this cultural background for me, but rather to say that I connect with you at a human level, at a Muslim level, and therefore we love each other for the sake of Allah. And the third thing that we need to bring in order to welcome our youth into the community, and I say this with all my respect to the elders here, is we need to humble ourselves. We need to have humility. We always, and I'm not even that young anymore. The hairs are less and the pounds are more now. And I'll tell you, it's always complicated to sit with a young man and do something my teachers insisted that I learn. He said, sit with people and before you teach them, be ready to learn from them. Be ready to learn from them. I don't care how many prayers he's missed. I don't care how many sins they've done. The Prophet ﷺ, if you can imagine this with me for a moment, he was found sitting with a companion. The Prophet ﷺ used to receive wahi himself. Angel Jibreel used to bring the wahi to the Prophet ﷺ himself, to the Prophet ﷺ. And yet he was found sitting with a young companion and he asked him to recite Quran to him. The Sahabi, he looked at the Prophet of Allah, he said, Ya Rasulullah, the wahi comes down to you. Nobody will recite it as well as you. You want me to read? He said, I love to hear it from others. And he asked him to read. Humble ourselves. Be ready to learn from your son. Be ready to learn from your sister. Be ready to learn from your younger brother. This is what will allow new opportunities to prosper in our community. And the last thing that we need to do is we need to empower. We must empower. That empowering comes in different forms. A month ago, I was sitting and we were eating wings together and we were chilling, and it was Isha time, Adhan came, and one of the youth came to me, and he's one of the youth that I expect more from. He said, Tariq, can we do something real quick? I said, what's up? He said, it's Adhan is going off. Can we do wudu together real quick? And this man is in his 20s. And I said, no problem, Habib. We went into the washroom together, we rolled up our sleeves, and we made wudu together. Without any shame, empowering through education. But empowering is not only through education, empowering is often, my dear brother and sister, empowering takes place by inspiring people to move forward. Imagine the Prophet ﷺ ready to migrate an entire nation, an entire community that would last for eternity. The Ummah of Muhammad ﷺ is ready to take a historic step and migrate from where? From Mecca to Medina. He needs to send the very best of the best to go there, to teach the people, to inspire the people, to instill in them values and principles that would change the fabric of society for eternity. Who does he send? He sends Mus'ab ibn Umair, radiallahu ta'ala an, one of the youngest companions. He empowers him, he educates him, and he puts him out there to be a source of khair. As soon as we begin to do these things in our community, we will begin to see a ripple effect where our masajid will be as what they need to be, a safe haven for each and every one of our youth. Jazakumullahu khairan. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.